byproduct. That's got its own journey. But Plisitron, as a research project, as we've come out with the kind of the technology that allows us to communicate with people, with an audience live, and we've got a performance that is specifically about making dance from people's stories. So that was what we ended up with.
And we just reach out and try to get it from the other, and perhaps the impulse to find salvation in the other is a mistake, and perhaps the answer is in our creativity instead.
Diplomacy first. We were going to try to promote increased economic development in the Muslim countries to deal with this demographic bulge that was coming into play.
Love to explore. They're adventurous. They try new things, and they're excited about sharing. Their passion with other people, and I love surrounding myself with like-minded people who
all I can do is try and draw attention to the choices that we're making that aren't serving us well. And I would say that the way we eat is clearly an example of something that's, like, you look at the rates of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, diverse.
Society was to try to incorporate them into mainstream institutions and culture through education, job training, housing, medical care, and so on. But we now know that poverty is
no attempt to turn the clock back, no attempt to try and get out of this. The UK will be leaving the European Union. I think we have a question from Jason Groves from the Daily Mail.
Hi, it's Jason Groves from the Daily Mail. Mr. President, you came to
my leadership team, which everyone knows is a quote that I really try to follow every day, and it comes from Napoleon, that the role of a leader is to define reality and to give hope. And I said, in that situation, what we've got to do is define
and motivations, and just try to see the facts and the evidence as objectively as they can. And the answer is emotional. So just as soldier mindset is rooted in emotions like defensiveness,
rock, or fasten a padlock to a bridge. In this way, we try to push our impermanence from our minds. The monuments, statues, bridges, they give us a sense of continuity, stability, that this
we have become so divided, and we've got to try to get people, back listening to each other and trying to roll up our sleeves and solve these problems that we face. And I think we can do that.
and I know I have to let you go, but
the first rule is don't try to. Because if you do, you will be like someone trying to make rough water smooth with a
We try to make it just a little bit better, and then somebody else picks it up and they do their part. And there are people who are
So you've got to try and figure out how to turn those problems into solutions. And if you succeed at that, well, you'll have the ability to do that wherever you find yourself. Now that challenge, that resonates.
Troy, maybe you should try writing something yourself. Remember that story you told us about your grandma from Saigon? And so on and so forth. The sun would set, the paint would dry, the sets would go up, the sets would come down.
And what would you try to...
Try to prevent him from destroying the United States.
So you're going to lead the Civil War?
No, I wouldn't take up arms. I think that might be a little extreme.
Oh, right, because you were saying before we were rolling that you wanted to take away.
My first try, I figured that I could do something similar, and I created a water tank and I filled it with ice and freezing cold water, and I stayed inside of that.
As soon as DNA was discovered, people tried to tinker with it. In the 1960s, scientists bombarded plants with radiation to cause random mutations in the genetic code. The idea was to get a useful plant variation by pure chance.
But it's only a start. Let's try it again a little bit differently. Hold your hands together, put your other hand on top. Now, if you're watching this little token, this obviously has become a little target. It's like a red herring. If we watch this kind of close, it looks like it goes away. It's not back on your shoulder.
So that is Artemisia saying that what she did to Agostino to try and stop him is she scratched his face, she pulled his hair.
The trial judge ordered that Artemisia be tortured to make sure she was telling the truth. And with
around me, and I try to be in the moment and shoot the things that I think are important in the moment rather than what I planned necessarily. But then in the editing process, it's a constant kind of molding, putting in things, taking away things, adjusting the perspective.
And I can bring it back and try to put it into my books. If you're writing for kids, think about the age of the audience constantly. My big rule for writing middle grade horror is that
too big to actually try to educate all of humanity. I think of the incredible work that you've done. I remember back in 2013 when I interviewed you, pretty much every
But when you try to force them on somebody else by using the statement, the fact of the matter is, and then go on to share your opinion, you're going to get a lot of defensiveness and pushback. And yet, if you can
stretches, I've been more likely to try to serve that to you. Not all the time, of course, but even when served in moderation, that's not really good for art history.
Incredible violation of academic values to try to silence other people, to stop them from speaking, to stop your fellow students from listening. Anyway, so I'm not saying all the students doing the protesting are depressed. What I'm saying is that certain ideas about
And I try to go to like the best new sandwich shop or this like restaurant that, you know, got a rave review recently. And I haven't had real authentic Chicago deep dish pizza.
What? Today is the day, Drew.
Today is the day.
And if people are determined enough to try and stay, then we should give them every opportunity. We should have things like broadband.
They want to try and understand what's the difference.
Well, the difference is Mr. Mulcair wants to continue with Mr. Harper's budget plan. Mr. Mulcair is committing to balancing the budget.
That we've been facing for the last year or so come to bear to try to make Florida a better place to live as well. So thank you for listening today. Thank you for being a part of Black History.
So I'm honored to try and give this a bit of perspective and insight to which this new light offers. I came up with ETC. I programmed the vision and now Broadway's, but then
and they try to find something that they're good at doing, that they like doing. Just a much more functional system of their own where vocational education is an afterthought at best.
So we were going to try and count out 1 million pieces of this metal dust to represent our 1 million subscribers, but then we realized that was just going to be impossible. So what we've done instead is
So I would say, you know, try not to compare yourself. Go for the goals that feel meaningful to you versus the goals you see other people going for, because the worst thing you could possibly do in life is strive to achieve someone else's.
In the meantime, Nora sends Mrs. Lind to try to get Krogstad to reconsider. It's now Act 3, and Mrs. Lind is speaking with Krogstad at the Helmers' house.
So let's all try and support our community and take the vaccine.
We will just let you know.
Thank you.
Any chance of anyone royal, Claire? Oh, okay. Better than nothing. And action.
So roll up your sleeve. It's
I've set up a quick science experiment that you could try at home to find out more how light travels, reflects and refracts. So, first things first.
Idea. For all these, just try to rewrite them and see what happens. So when we rewrite it, we get 10 to the x power equals 0. If you think about this,
dilemma. Do you spend big to try to win the golden hexagons outright, save as much as possible for silver, or something in between? Gordon can use his magic mirror and 99 gems to see, and the process inspired humans to try and do the same. In World War I, French scientists sent ultrasound beams into the ocean to detect nearby enemy submarines. This early form of
policies to address crime and, like many other people, trying to understand the why, what, when, where and how of the facts like those that I just...
And community is the safest place to try confidence on. I traveled to Kenya this year to learn about women's empowerment among Maasai women. There I met a group of young women called Team Lioness.
Way too long is because we try to sweep it under the rug. We don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to talk about the fact that there's still room for improvement.
History supports who we are or what we are, but it doesn't define.
That way. Try this. Don't be afraid of that. Get rid of the fears that are so dominating your life. As Anita talks about fear and what a thing it was that created the cancer in her life, which allowed
wrong with it. I mean, if you didn't try to attract attention and get people to click on your links, then you wouldn't really be doing your job. But there is a second definition, one that I think more people ascribe to, which is something such as a headline designed to make readers want to click on.
But also copy. Take what you see and try it out sometimes. The jazz legend Clark Terry had a system for learning improvisation that he called imitate a
for granted. Try to understand that tough love is still love. And by you taking a step back, you're allowing the other person to step up and learn from their actions. And if you're dealing with someone volatile, prioritize your safety and seek help as soon as possible. My name is
the globe. So whenever I would call to try and make a connection or meet with someone who was the head of a company, particularly Fortune 500 companies,
try to find out what notes it actually creates, and then I run to my guitar to listen to what it sounds like, and it's always completely different.
So don't resist them, don't try and hide or run away from them, just allow them to come. You want to grab them out of your subconscious, or you want to grab them into the spotlight. Then write all the negative talk down so I'm aware of all the
formulas. So not only do you get to try out different things and find out the formula you like, it's a great deal and it comes with a voucher for a free big one. I still haven't ever used any of my vouchers, but I plan on using them.
If you want to try this activity at home, all you'll need are 2 clear containers with lids, some soil from different areas, some water, and of course, an okay from a grown-up. Here, we have 2 cups of soil. One is
we would try to get inside the helmet, try to look out through the helmet's eyes at that world around the people that were wearing and using and encountering this helmet. And I think that would be a really fun thing for us to do together tonight, because I think that even though this helmet has
stories, try to actually visualize what you're saying. Fetching a fireman, what does that even mean? Are you fetching an actual globule of flame and bringing it somewhere? Are you fetching a fireman, like an actual dude fire?
I try not to do accents because it's kind of
cliche, and I can't do accents very well, but I just love the way Australians say beer.
There it is.
And thus begins another round of Let's Outsmart Nature. So anyway, they start.
Whenever you listen to audio material, try to repeat after the recording. You can do this with movies, YouTube videos, songs, or any audio you can get your hands on. Listen attentively, pause the recording, and repeat.
Countries in the Middle East, it's part of a move to try and build relationships with those countries.
The lack of transparency around some of these trials is worrying. The full sign-off
Wah! Try, I want more milk, please. So we prize good, accurate communication over.
Try again until you're happy with your responses. Next, make sure that you research the company you are applying to. If you know someone who already works there, maybe you could ask them about working for the company.
Talk to friends. Why don't I try to figure out what they're feeling? And maybe it'll be really good if I name the feeling. And I was talking to a psychologist about this, and he said, you
don't need to have special rules that try to classify whether their income is from labor or from business. And so we're really in a new era at the federal level. We do have a good example for some of the problems that can arise. In Kansas, taxpayers were allowed to reduce their taxes
with the nice, straight Trojan lines. If you try to do that anywhere in the center of these arms, you'll create new, isolated clusters of Trojans. So the only option is to go to the perimeter of the field and move some Trojan.
Europeans who are leaving to try and find different forms of life. The Raft of Medusa documents that really well as one parallelist experience at sea. And I looked at that a lot in studying that in the making of this painting.
Regrets, thinking, well, I could have done this and I didn't try that and I didn't really bring my all. Are there solutions, are there strategies that you're thinking of that you could do that might bring this relationship back to a place of
near to it, and then you can make it beep to try and find it. It uses Apple's Find network, which means that any iPhone will be able to locate this thing, but only you can actually see its location because
yourself up for not writing perfect code on your first try, keep this in mind. No one writes perfect code on their first try. Programming is a process of planning.
So if you'd like to try Bright Cellars for yourself, click my link down below and get 50% off your first 6-bottle box plus a bonus bottle. Take the quiz and get started. Big thanks to Bright Cellars for sponsoring this video and for their continued support. You can use the virtual mirror tool and try on glasses like I did. These ones are my current favorites. I have some others. Please let me know what you think. Sunnies.
Try factoring a few and you'll find the pattern. It could be prime, where the product must be of one and itself, or it could be the product of one and the square of a prime.
Is they try to put out the little fuse on the dynamite. Once that has blown, the avalanche is coming, whether you like it or not. And you can pour all the water you want on the remains of the dynamite, but it is not going to stop the avalanche. Yeah.
The curators and the scientists, we decided to try and clean that area of the painting as well, which is what I'll be showing you today.
But for the most part, I try to. I make enough time for it. Regardless of what you decide is right for you, we like to stick with the 3 main moments of a good morning, good life. Much sooner than if I would have sat there and continued to try to deal with something that I was not dealing with very well. So when you're struggling and you're trying to
today, I want to try something a little different. Instead of thinking about a story, I want you to stop and think about the thing I'm doing here. Like right now, literally, that I'm standing here and I'm telling you a story.
Patient that had recovered from COVID-19, and we dived right into that to try to find antibodies that could be used as a drug against COVID. This was a sprint, and we knew exactly.
So I'm just going to try and close the account completely, hopefully get that £8 back because every little helps, and just, I don't know, get that account behind me because I'm not using it. It's just sort of surplus to requirements and I would like to wash my hands of it and move on.
Refresher, but we'll try to ease back into reading spectra with an example. This is the proton NMR spectrum of 4-chlorophenol, which is
Instead, try to keep the person safe from falling or bumping their head. Shift them onto their side to keep airways open, and stay with them until medical help arrives.
That one-eyed is for your celebrity crush, try diversifying the people that you follow online. The same goes for any crush that you have. If they're the only person
and does show aging, and try to solve aging in that one organism. And if we can do that, maybe what we learn will be applicable to humans. In the organism that I work on,
so we really try to explain to people how it is that they, the typical Americans who work for a living and have enough
report, I had 3 different methodologies to try to aggregate what I call this sort of involuntary forfeiture. And I call it, I don't classify it necessarily.
course, and it gives you an opportunity to try all of the pies. So off the back of that, I thought, oh, I'd really like to have a crack at kind of doing some writing. I think it's 3 5.
That was terrible. And I'll be like, well, did you try someone else? And like, no, I went to this one person. And I'll say, well, listen, and I give them my statistic that some people see up to 3 before they really connect with somebody.
I have to meet 20 people before I find one I like. So
their service. I've got a link to them down in the description if you do want to try them out though. Otherwise, you can find the more detailed follow-up videos for each tissue type in this playlist here. And
I just always try to keep that in mind, that like I'm 37 and sometimes I don't think I realize how, you know, not that I'm saying I'm old, but like how much older that is from 19 until I'm around 19-year-olds. And then I'm like, oh my God, they're children.
Before we try to work to overcome any hang-ups that we might have as a result. Don't worry. Just because we think we may have daddy issues doesn't mean we have to live with them forever. We can.
We try to create and maintain a friendly atmosphere, and some of the best conversations, and not just philosophical, happen between students and between
courses that takes interactivity to the next level. So if you'd like to give them a try, you can head to brilliant.org/scishow to sign up and save 20%.
But to try to include something in the sculpture that would make people go, who is this woman? What is she? Why is she here? What does she represent? And so
try to remember to reach back and grab someone else who's stuck until more of us can make it to solid ground. Because optimism is not a relic of the past. It's one key to building a better future by letting us see it more.
So try to remember, when you square root the side that has the constant, you immediately have 2 solutions possible, the positive and the negative version. Okay, on the left side, meanwhile, what that does is gets rid
and I taste and I imitate and I try to assimilate, and then I try to innovate, which means that I hopefully become my own person, have my own identity, my own sound. That's what we're looking for.
Kobe looking over here and seeing this hat that she wants to try on. So in other words, the reason
this time, try to hear those new expressions in the context. So the expressions that you highlighted during your breakfast, try to listen and catch them. This is very deliberate practice.
Group. Let's try this. Add 2 more mice to each group. Then try a different statistical method. If I remember correctly, I believe Donna performed a 2-way ANOVA. See if changing those parameters –
White people who want to try on our looks and our culture, but discard the struggles that come with our identities, and treat our skin color like an accessory or as an aesthetic. And what I've come to realize is that racism is evolving. It's more nuanced.
Or to try hard not to show strong emotions. The correct answer is A, to free yourself from an illness
You know, I'm at that age now where you try not to do the name dances or else your daughter's like, stop.
Stop, Mom.
So I just sort of have my, you know.
The whole strategy was to try to destroy me as a person. My mother died after I became president.
What I try to do in music, transmitting something so it lives in somebody else.
Underneath. It's very important to try and imagine the original location of this picture, because what Tiepolo has effectively done is he's opened up the ceiling to the sky above. So we're looking up to the sky and we can see these deities sort of perched on these sort of fluffy rose-coloured clouds.
Try and maintain biodiversity on the planet.
The Natural History Museum has over
Try to hold off as close as you can to the actual event, and for now, go easy on your local weather person.
Is, are you continuing to try to grow your oil and gas production? And on that latter point, we're actually shrinking it. We are taking the production of this company down by almost
nothing. They close one door so someone else can try and open another, armed with the knowledge. A great service is done. And so I want to
The thing is, no matter how hard you try, you can't think about nothing. But I can think about this. This is something
to try to kickstart the economy, try to do A, B, or C. My third piece of advice, substantive piece, is
Try not to let those feelings of nostalgia and loss overshadow what should be an exciting time and the start of a new journey. Remember too, they will be conflicted by feelings of the past and the present and the future. There are many changes ahead.
To try and get those fun aspects within the students around those types of things.
You know, all of the things we value are enhanced by the opportunities that we can see through reading. So if reading is the one thing that makes
try to make a flawless crystal the size of the universe. Eric says that if magnetic monopoles are massive enough to collapse the early universe, wouldn't we only find them inside black holes? Well, it depends on their
I'm here to try to make their dreams a reality in whatever way that looks like.
I got accepted into Tarleton State University.
That originally was to try and replace silicon in puppet making. The processes are part of a sustainable future in looking at new ways of making things with what we find that's
diners, but we're going to try it with pixie sticks just because. So once we've got a generous smattering of soured sugar on there, we're loading up this sandwich with as much Captain Crunch as we can muster, pressing down with every ounce of our teenage angst, marrying the two slices together, and not enough survival. Try to darken up the chicken before adding the garlic, sauteing for an additional 30 seconds, and then, mercifully, we're going to add the Kung Pao sauce, which, because we wimped out about the heat and fried our chicken in too cold and too wish you could reach through the screen and try? Yes. Into thirds to try to get it into a more rectangular shape. Then ideally we're going to wrap it in plastic wrap and fridge it overnight, but if you want same-day babka, you can place it in a covered bowl and let it rise at room temperature for 1 hour. Next up we need to make our filling, and I'm going to start with cinnamon. Into a large bowl,
also don't try not to touch it with your hands as much as I am, because hot hands. I'll just turn it 90 degrees so that it's being agitated in the opposite direction as well. Okay, I'm going to dust it off a smidge.
Okay, we're going to try Alvin's spooky saran wrap trick.
I don't think that's how you do it.
Okay, thanks, Alvin.
So a little provolone to hopefully try to cut that a little bit, make it easier, make it neater, make it nicer. And then I'm thinking, this is the ace up the sleeve.
And once you try this stuff, you will agree with me that it doesn't have the same plasticky sort of stale flavor that the stuff out of the bottle does. But we're not stopping there. For our BLT sliders, we're going to flavor our mayo with ranch flavors. So to about 2 cups of mayonnaise, we're adding about a 1/4 cup each. Tamales. I'm going to try out one of the braised beef ones first. I'm going to smear it down with some Honduran crema. If you can't find that, just mix a little lime juice with some sour cream and a little scoop of salsa roja. And there you have it, one of my all-time favorite comfort foods. These guys are easy to make.
But we should probably try this with actual beef. So this is some flank steak. I'm cutting them into little thin strips to match the bell peppers. And I'm gonna warm up my hands over the wok because I get cold kind of easily. Same treatment as before though. A little bit of oil to get the pan.
You're flipped inverted and you're having to try and get out.
From there, Tom designed this all-encompassing aviation training for all the actors.
I started them out in a single-engine airplane to build up.
Looking for a wedding dress? Try a new take on a timeless classic. It's sleek, flattering, and modest, just like the traditional dress. Commercials. Could anything be more insufferable?
Influences or trying on different personalities to see what works. But John has been the same since the very first time I met him. Nice and present. In 1990,
ourselves in the ways in which we try to respond to a changing climate. How can we green our cities and not create a problem with mosquitoes? Now, mosquitoes are the deadliest animals on the planet. About 500,000 people die every year because of mosquito bites.
Thinks they know, but when they try to put words to it, they can't. After you watch this course, you'll be able to answer that question. What is happiness? And spoiler alert, it's not a feeling. It's
and I must try and not do that, and so there is a sense that there is a bit of, someone else said to me, God, my friend's having, lots of trouble with their kids at the moment. I'm going to buy them tickets.
Try to correct for some of these issues that might play out due to just lack of attention or lack of ability to focus on every patient with a lot of time. Well,
we can try to minimize the effect by observing for longer periods of time, not having obvious recording equipment, and making the participant comfortable with the purpose of the observation. Diary studies have
feedback and willing to try uncomfortable new ideas. This is a lot easier than it sounds. Mentors want to see their sharing is making a difference.
Your goal isn't to try to design for every scenario, but focus on 1 to 3 manageable and realistic scenarios. This gives you a good balance.
Okay, first experiment you should definitely try at home is a prism made of Jell-O. So I've got a laser pointer here, and if I shine it through this Jell-O, you can see some amazing optical properties of light. So you can It's a little hard to relate. So let's try this. You know that thing where you hold hands and spin around each other? The faster you spin, the harder you have to hold on or you'll fly apart. Same applies to galaxies. The faster
saw it, don't try and gaslight the audience into thinking that they're different. They're clearly the same pitch, right? Well, are you sure about that? Okay, I know what you're getting at here, but they sound and look identical when you play the 2 notes.
The first is to grab some clay and try it yourself. If you want to get better, you gotta practice. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Proco 3D YouTube channel. That's where the vast majority of sculpture-related content will be.
Trying to think value-wise and temperature-wise how I could separate that. I know these 2 yellows won't work. It's just going to make it look like a weird green. So using a lot
can always add the clay back on and try again. Again, focus on the shape of the head from above. Once we have removed these side planes, let's take some time to draw some additional lines to help us place the facial features. Start from the brow.
When I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that. I feel like that will probably set off a migraine for me. Things like going to that really noisy children's thing.
Or try to communicate through somebody else instead of speaking to you directly. The question is, why then is assertive communication the best approach for you? Well, it's the best approach because in contrast, educational, but I'll try to create some basic concrete tips for each of the 4 maxims. A maxim is just an unspoken principle or rule of conversation.
Trey, I think we should try some of the warm cookies. Oh my gosh. Is your cookie like this? There's like gooey milk chocolate and gooey dark chocolate inside. And so let's go ahead and
So we try to do ADR, frankly, as little as possible.
And so a lot of her job is making words sound better.
The show I'm currently working on, I remember in the middle of this one word, there was just this loud metal clang.
And I wanted to try working in the place where it all started. I first learned about this office 5 years ago. Most open offices were designed by consultants. This one was designed by
can send us a question and we will dig in and try to find some answers for you. Like a couple of weeks ago, Kim and I made a video about the ethics of zoos that came from an amazing question from one of our subscribers, Gurov. A few months back, Joss made an incredible video about the history of unions and why
And when you try to search for Henry Rogers online, there's no information about the painter himself. It's almost like he only exists in these paintings of Paris. The more I read Lord's website, the more
Some workers try to file complaints only to find there are few effective mechanisms in place. And speaking out comes with risk of retaliation, which has kept migrants isolated in the kafala system with increasing debt and unable to access.
Talk to their children about how it's important to try and keep species from going extinct. But something much more concrete and more simple also happens.
Susan and her colleagues noticed that
in the profession, we tend to try to say that jaywalk is a term that was developed by the auto interests in the early 1900s to essentially
And if you tried to throw a spiral loaf of bread or some other object, it wouldn't tip over either. It only works on objects that are cylindrically symmetrical, like a football.
The Russians are going to try and replace these further catastrophic losses with likely diminishing returns, but I am confident
their age, or you think it would be rude to try and guess their age. Now, the last point in this vocabulary section of the lesson, I want to talk to you about the dreaded fun fact. I've been to a lot of events.
But I couldn't believe how difficult it was to try and get into public service. I thought, I was willing to take a pay cut. I was willing to move anywhere. I was willing to do anything. And it was difficult. I mean, I was in touch with people.
Trainer to try to figure out the underlying issues behind his reactive behavior. On the first day of our meeting, the trainer looks at me and says, fixes that do not address the root causes of an issue are not really fixes at all.
And we should try to do something about it. Here are 4 things that we can do. The first thing we can do
home. My grandpa just kept saying, try to stay positive. I don't think that helped. She needed her time to feel sad. She eventually moved on. I feel bad she couldn't walk in her cap and gown.
I totally
If they try, the whole thing just goes to shambles. Quantum cryptography comes with the promise of being unbreakable. Now, whether such claims are actually possible is still a question.
To try to discourage Japan from conquering certain parts of China, criticizing Japanese aggression and announcing that the U.S. would not recognize any position Japan gained through
ways to try to push Agassi out of that comfort zone and into the corners. These two powerhouses competed in every Grand Slam on every surface. Agassi won the meetings at the French and Australia, while Sampras at Wimbledon.
We needed to try and match the magic of Shakespeare's imagination.
I got cast a long time ago for this new production of The Tempest, and
they can then try to find or develop a drug that stops those proteins acting up, and that will prevent the disease. It's a great plan, but it's a slow process. So far, they've only identified
If you try to unite people, let's all unite against them. They're the bad people. They're the cause of the problems. Let's all stick together. That's a really dangerous thing to do in a multi-ethnic society, especially in a university where we're
give up. Hostage negotiators used a bullhorn to try and talk to the gunman.
Billy, we're on the same team.
What persuaded the gunman finally to come out?
I think it was excellent.
That the big guys try to do things that make people smile, even if you make a fool of yourself. Taking notes has been the most
When considering how to address stress in your life, first try to identify the situations in which you feel heightened anxiety or experience any of the physical symptoms associated with increased stress. Do your palms get sweaty?
It might seem absurd to try solving this problem with more foreign fauna, but perhaps a new arrival could fight invaders and feed the alligators, giving them the boost they need.
On our star to try to predict when they might happen. Step back in time to 1859. First, in Victoria.
Then, to study further, go on Youglish and try listening to different people using that same expression. Step 3.
Is that if you try something and it's an earnest try and you've given it everything and it fails, that's actually great because now we know that that doesn't work and we can move quickly on to our next idea.
To consider the risks and to try to set forth some principles for regulating research.
There were approximately 150 scientists from around the world.
And we also invite
So we're going to try and get that all out in the open, cleared up. This is going to be a safe space where we can tell our truths without judgment. Okay, so obviously I'm going to try and film as much of this as I can for
Give the device enough time to reset and try to contact our server again. Thank you for watching this No IP support video. Please like and subscribe to see all future content, and if you have an idea for a video, please leave it in the comments.
Word and try to predict the brain scratch pad for the same word. We can do it the other way around too. So let's train a new model. It's going to look at the neural network scratch pad for a particular
The smarter solution is to try to design systems that attract all of the right people into power so we get better outcomes. And that is the task, I think, for the 21st century, because it's a problem that
Okay, let's try another one with piece of cake.
Right now, it's a piece of cake. It's a piece of cake. So I realized what we really...
And then you can just do...
And as tradition goes, we present a piece
a bunch of rocks that naturally react with CO2 and try to speed up that reaction, or we can use chemistry to mimic natural processes through technologies like direct air capture, which basically use a type of chemical that selectively binds with CO2 to capture it.
Time. One thing to try is to set aside the initial 6 to 7 minutes of an hour-long meeting for informal chat about non-work matters, just to talk.
They scan a lot of text and try to learn a language. They can check their process by covering up the answers and then seeing if they got it right. Then, they can use that knowledge to recognize sentiment, summarize,
Try not to overlap them because that just adds to the thickness of the covering that we have to do. And then use your knife to tear it. It makes a nice straight line. It's really easy to work with. And once we've got all 4 sides covered up there, then we're just going to
Most people are just going to try and avoid those people. English learners probably realize how difficult it might be, so they might be a little more flexible here.
When we try to naively combine these two theories, hoping for a more fundamental theory of the universe, everything breaks. We get nonsense answers like infinite energies or probability.
Come into your video, but you know, if you never try, if you never approach someone, and if
5, and they try to describe in great detail what you are able to do in a particular level. And I think this is also quite unrealistic. You know, sometimes we do better than at other times, depending on what.
As a team, which brings together everyone's puzzle-solving expertise to try to help people live happier and healthier lives.
Your way, try Who Hot Mongolian Grill. While the food here won't blow you away, you should be pleased with what you receive. If you're unhappy, it'll be your own fault. At Who
Usually I try to think of some sort of real ending before I come. They call the feature, that's the wrong box.
Publications went to great efforts to try and identify the correct images, but they did make some mistakes. And so in this case, an engraving after this portrait type was identified as Lady Jane Grey. And so subsequent generations of historians, looking back to kind of early
free. Be one of the first to try Function of Beauty's new line of skincare products through my exclusive early access link. And with the super secret offer they've hooked us up with, you can get an extra 10% off any skincare bundle through the link in the description box below. That is a total savings of over the late 16th and early 17th centuries, so this is the method I've decided to try out. It's worked out surprisingly well. The ink gives a strong, clear line without bleeding or soaking through the wool. We'll see if this still holds true on some of the silk.
Cody Hackins will try and fail to draw his toy sword. Luke Atme will clean his magnifying eyeglass thing. Franziska von Karma will tensely grip the fabric of her sleeve, just like her dad does, by the way. And they'll add these anticipation frames to the post.
Whole set. For the skirt area, I wanted to try some solid panels, kind of like the Met piece, as well as a few collapsible versions, which seems to be a bit more
and try and make it into something that people need. Well, Whittle here worked the other way round. He started with a need, the need for
about the dream, and the tutor tells him that even in dreams we have to try to act nobly and not throw people off balconies. The people find out about the king's experiment and that they have a prince. They rebel.
You hear a taunt of, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" No, not really, no. But something tells you you should keep playing. Tails is gone. His player screen is no longer selectable.
We have a responsibility to try to find that. But when we know it's not there, we have to recognize that as well. And to have time go by where our position gets misrepresented by the Republicans rather than coming.
Soviet Union. He's watched the U.S., in his view, humiliate him and try to undermine him. My question is this the moment that in his own mind, his life has been building up to, the invasion of Ukraine?
I'm going to try to rip out as many of those spines as I can. Hopefully this causes not too much irritation and gives me a little bit of relief. Here we go. Oh, that is tender.
Thanks. So yeah, we're going to try avoid as much as possible having this human-mamba conflict, especially with the guys, dogs and cats. So we're going to try get rid of this mamba and relocate it.
So right now Tyrone is just flipping every piece of flat
Try volunteering to lead the next study group or group project. Why? Well, in a 2014 study, researchers explored whether feelings towards other people influence
attraction. Everyone was eager to try it, so was Tyree. Tick, as his friends called him, was an exemplary 14-year-old boy from St. Louis, Missouri, who was visiting Orlando for a football program.
Something else occurring in that present moment and to try to focus even deeper on it. It might look something like this. Man, she is super thick. Look at the way she just fills out those jeans. I just want to, you know what? I'm thinking about her again. Let me focus in on my
Give the one I suggested a try in your next presentation and let me know how it works out. Also, let me know what other phrases you have tried that have also been successful in transitioning from one.
Let's get amongst it. Let's try it. Come on. Look at that.
I really try and bring modern stories and perspectives to this art form that
and try and replicate firings, tools, techniques. The project I'm working on at the moment is Japanese Neolithic pottery, specifically the
They make it so easy and convenient to try on glasses like I did using the virtual mirror tool. It allows you to try on glasses to see how they look on your face. Glasses USA sent me a bunch of glasses, so I'd love to hear what you think about them.
And that's what we try and have in the house. My wife and I run the ship together.
Gather your supplies and try your hand at weaving. ¿Cuáles son algunos textiles que son importantes para ustedes? Junten sus materiales y intenten tejer. Small talk. This is something that is really cool to try with the people in your life to spark some deeper conversation and just to like know people on a deeper level. Or if you'd like, you can bring this on like a first date.
I try to be a positive presence in their life and love them all so much. Over the last 7 or 8 years, my son has become addicted to drugs. He was prescribed meds, which led to street drugs. He goes through a cycle of
Will you try it if I make it shorter?
No.
How about now?
No.
Let me try this one.
Every year?
Yeah, we try to go over there every summer, and sometimes for a holiday too.
Oh, well, welcome back.
Hey, how's your week going?
Planting gives me a chance to try out new technology. One of the new technology was the field view seed scripts. So when we're planting, I already know that it is the right seed.
Right. So when Ukrainians try to found states in 1918, they take the form of republics. They take the name of republics. That is in some way natural because it's the European norm, but it's also natural because a republic is also an important part.
About the people we've lost and just try to honor them the best we can, and in the meantime be really public with that memorial so that we can bring awareness to that conversation.
So where do the homeless go at night?
I think it's important we try to understand why people do get married in the first place. For some people, of course, it's a religious matter. It's a covenantal relationship. I think for many
Try to catch yourself the next time you go shopping to see if your purchasing decisions are being influenced by the contrast effect. Confirmation.
I thought I would try to recreate the title sequence from Rings of Power using my Chladni plates. If you want to know more about the history of Chladni figures, then I recommend you watch the original video link in the card and the description. But the basic principle is you use a vibrating metal plate to create a
lines and chuck out ideas and try saying this instead. Not improvising, but like, you know, suggesting lines and nudging you in the right direction. But you got to be prepared to pivot and be on your toes. Even though Cheney's very not somebody who you would think of as being on his toes. He's very much like flat-footed. But yeah, no, really.
Was willing to try stimulant medication to see if it helped, which it did, a lot. But even after that, it felt like no one really took my ADHD seriously, so I didn't take it seriously. I didn't ask for accommodations. I didn't get coaching or therapy for it. I even went off my meds completely for a while because someone I trusted told me I didn't need them. Even after
we try to do justice to their process by learning from what we see and repairing or rebinding volumes in a respectful and sympathetic way.
The digitization unit captures and converts a variety of paper-based and media materials to preserve, increase access.
exercise. And so I wanted to write a book to try to debunk a lot of myths about physical activity and about exercise using the lenses of evolution and anthropology. If there's any one
doing on a moment-to-moment basis is try to keep us alive. And many scholars have suggested that emotions actually evolved in order to keep us alive, to ensure our survival in a world that was filled with bears and tigers and big animals that were trying to eat us. But it's not just biology.
So I was really drawn to try to understand, how do young people develop these capacities? What do they look like in the brains of young people? And what might be some of the affordances of these capacities for thinking? So we designed an experiment, a 5-year longitudinal study.
And so every day I make a conscious decision to try to slow down, to find the beauty in the quotidian. We live in such a fast world, but if we choose to view the world through a wonder lens, we can find it, and find it every day.
A round fit may be best for you. Now we try a round fit helmet. We can see that this is a much more comfortable fit, with pressure evenly distributed around the head. With the chin strap unfastened, ensure the helmet does not move independently of your eyebrows.
Notes to try to tell the story of algal evolution and diversity, one microfossil in particular had features that didn't match any known alga. It was a spherical mass of cells about 30 microns across. The cells on the inside were pressed together so tightly that they weren't spheres anymore, but had straight.
One way is to try to reframe these thoughts or feelings when they come. For example, consider a thought like, I should be able to deal with this. The this could be anything. Another call to say your child is acting out at school, a failed test, even an argument with your partner about whether or not.
So, I kind of try to use it as an advantage to get one step ahead of them. Over the years, I say I was blessed with my son, but he has ADHD. So one advantage I had having that from diagnosis as a very young child, I was able to work with him and
real. And try to let go of some of the negative thoughts about yourself you might be holding on to. It was never about trying harder or being lazy. Your brain just works differently. And that is not a bad thing. It's a part of who you are. Dealing with these feelings can be tough.
Wow, Callie, do you want to try a little harder? I think she got to raise her game. I never thought I'd say that about puns, but.
Jake Hart, Raphael Hassa, Annie and Eric Higgins, John Davison Ing, Melanie Lamb Carnevale, Addie, Tony Dye, and Juan M.
Become an Eonite at patreon.com/eons.
Aids. And this is what I try to communicate with the audiologists that I speak to and the hearing instrument specialists that I speak to. They need to understand that perception is reality. If they're giving off the perception that the hearing aids are what's doing the hard work to get people to hear their best, then they are communicating the wrong message and they need
coats of color just to see how it goes and try to feather it into the rest of the leg. The problem is this finish is kind of green, and over time stains, colors, sun exposure, things will change over time, and I don't think it originally looked this green, but at least in my shop lighting there's a green hue to it. I'm not going to be able to reproduce that. So again, the goal.
It's really important that you don't try to make any repairs on these unless you can be absolutely certain of the association, so which specimen those fragments originated from. The last thing you want to be doing is gluing a head on the wrong body. You could end up really confusing potential collection users in the future. And this.
The area that we really encourage and try to promote the most growth in is that back and forth conversation between an adult and a child. There's tons of research that shows that that specific type of communication is what is going to really benefit the child long term.
officers and try to get a deal with the government in order to resolve our outstanding claims against the Crown.
For other iwi, the settlements haven't been as large, and they've taken decades to negotiate. I'm here at Natima.
Try to make separate zones in your house for different activities. The author likes to use the mantra, one space, one use. If you're trying to eliminate a bad habit, you can only rely on self-control in the short term. Cutting off bad habits at the source is a more reliable solution, and one of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to make it invisible.
Airplanes always try to fly the shortest path between two cities. They're basically flying in a straight line, but that line doesn't look straight on a map because the surface is curved. These shortest paths on curved surfaces are called geodesics. So all these lines are straight, they just don't look it because the world...
And then you try and control that in the print. But that really made me think that this is the language of hip hop. It's much harder, much more intense, and that's the sort of that's the way to frame this music, you know. So, and very much where, on the one hand, if I can get the subject to stand in front of the camera,
just carry on doing what you're doing before. Don't try and force it.
No.
Which is why. With Paula, it was 2 years. We originally asked her for a year.
Yeah.
And after 6 months, she came to us and said, I can't do it in a year. And so that's how it became 2 years.
Ultimately, the goal is to try to get quantum mechanics, the description of matter on the smallest microscopic scales and the highest energies, with gravity, which is the other extreme, space and time on the largest scales.
You try to come up with as many possible solutions as you possibly can. And you constantly challenge yourself. It's not good enough to have one answer. It's not good enough to have 3 answers. Let me come up with 7 possible answers to this. The physicist Richard Feynman said that his whole success as a Nobel Prize winning physicist was
my parents always taught me to try to do the right thing. You know, no matter what happens to you, you know, stay focused and try to do the right things. That was one of the hardest things that had happened, to stay focused on the mission when I'm, you know, internalizing all of my own.
I'll show you 3 ways. Starting with the most insecure way, the way you're about to try, you're gonna get hacked. And then I'll end with the most secure way, like you're invisible, they can't touch you. You're Edward Snowden, Snowden level security. Kind of a cool name for a company, actually. Dibs. Before we go to number 1 and I'll let you loose, you gotta know, the dark web isn't all bad. It was actually created with good intentions.
And if you don't, you have to try to actively listen for it. That's a pretty clear way that languages impact thought. But that doesn't feel close enough to the science fiction, does it? It's not like it's changing your understanding of the world. Science fiction wants the language you speak to affect the categories in your head, the way you understand the world.
Or do something that's unethical to try to get there.
Having that as your primary motivation, your primary frame of reference, can make it to where you're not putting in as much work and practice, and it's no longer about your passion for the sport or your joy.
Falling in love with the journey towards that end goal, I think, is more important. But if it's
you can try to understand a little bit more about what's underneath that. You won't call them passive-aggressive. Ideally, you will not dismiss them for that behavior, but you'll use that understanding to allow room for them to articulate their thoughts and feelings in a more direct way.
That the United States was sending its president to try to find a way to stabilize this environment. They probably would have failed, but they're much more likely to fail if they can only talk to Israel and they can't talk to the other side. And they failed because of Hamas misinformation.
Try to avoid trying to score points and set a good example. Another thing that we suggest that people do to minimize grandstanding in others is to try to make grandstanding embarrassing. Now, how do you do that without blame?
We don't just look around us and try to fit in, we try to have significance. We want our lives to matter. There are at least 3 distinct cognitive capacities that make humans intellectually unique. 1, we're very self-reflective. We spend a lot of time turning inward, thinking about the nature of our existence.
You try to make that factual world less salient. You try to make the world less about the facts that are between you and me, and more about the emotions that will either divide us or bring us together. It doesn't really matter which. Authoritarianism depends upon people getting used to hearing the things that they want to hear in what it
use our brains to try and figure out which individual genes we could change around, but that's a very hard way to do it. An easier way to do it, and it's a strategy that farmers have used for thousands of years, is to find a related crop that has the desired.
Then to have it try to express that in precise Wolfram language, then, and this is a critical feature of our computational language compared to, for example, a programming language, you as a human can read the code. And if it does what you want, you can use it as kind of a dependable component to build on. Okay, but let's say we use more and more AI, more and more computation.
A few years ago and had our first big meeting to try to make a sale. It was with a big oil company in Dallas. And across the boardroom from her were 5 old white guys. And Emily noticed very early on that they did something very interesting with their language choices. They started to use BS words.
In your heart. He said, try to love the questions themselves as though they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. He said, don't try to reach for the answers which could not be given to you now because you would not be able.
Then make your best guess and just give it a try. Then go back to your manager and say, I'm working on X, and I'm not quite sure of what to do next. I've taken X steps and spoken to so-and-so, and I understand this part, but I'm still unclear about this other part. What do you think about this approach? No, I'm not suggesting that you think.
I feel like if I don't do that or if I don't try, like I'm wasting all the things that I've been through and the lessons that I learned. Like I want to pass that on to as many people as I can. And if I can shape a next generational talent, I will love that.
In the way, which is just wild that we can stand here and try to understand better what he was seeing, but also how he was using his imagination at the same time. Like, it's pretty incredible.
Has our health. No matter how we try to slice and dice up our planet with political and geographical boundaries, health remains a species-wide concern. In some cases, our health has blurred these boundaries, and in other ways, human health has been decided by them. But with over 7 billion people living in about 2
at Monash, and someone said, well, why don't you try tutoring? And I thought, well, why not? It was a really fortuitous change because I found myself in an environment where I could have this interaction with students and contribute to their learning as well.
And try to understand more about cardiovascular disease. Then after about a decade of being away and learning new skills, I had the opportunity to return to Monash, and this time as a researcher rather than a student. It really felt like coming home. The Victorian Heart Institute is...
Before we try to tackle it, we should lay out what life needs here. By examining the recipe for life on Earth, we'll be better able to look for life among the stars. So, what does life need? First of all, a star. If we weren't circling the sun, you and I wouldn't be here for a couple of reasons. The sun
You can either try one of these other methods or just put some toothpaste on there again, scrub harder and longer, go ahead and try that out 1 or 2 more times and see if you can get rid of the fog that way. For me personally, with my Hollis M1 mask, which is my current primary mask, I had to scrub it 2 or 3 times and then I've never had a problem again. The next method you can use, believe it or not, would be
Hopefully it works. All right, so I'm going to try to convey the concept here so you know what we're after and why we're doing what we're doing. Still don't know if it's all going to work, but let's try it. So my doors are going to look something like this. Now in the middle, I'm going to use live edge material. I'm going to cut it into a veneer sheet. So imagine this is the boring walnut side, and then here's the exciting sapwood.
We recommend prioritizing profitability. Try to plan activities that have the highest impact on your bottom line. Diversify channels to expand your reach and focus on re-engaging existing users through push notifications, email, and in-app messages. Our industry is marching away from individual-based marketing towards
then try to embed and learn that content before you speak. At least try to come off script as much as you can. If you end up reading it, then it's going to become more monotonal and less variety of tone and pitch. And that's going to be less engaging for your audience.
Available men, what they'll try to do is they'll try to fix it, right? Like we jump in with a solution or advice, or you should do this, or you should do that. Well, that's coming from a place of wanting to shift the emotion, wanting to help. So now take someone who's emotionally unavailable. Being with someone who's in their pain when you're emotionally unavailable feels like this.
Before you get them hemmed, just try cuffing them. And this is also nice because you can choose the exact length. So you can cuff them to like 8 inches or 6.5 inches. And if you find the perfect length, but you don't want to cuff your shorts, just go get them tailored. Again, it's like $5 or $10, super easy.
Long-term headache in case you're going to try out this game for yourself. So trust me, this one ain't worth it.
Here I come!
But hey, besides from this one black sheep, I've always enjoyed Orion Burger's puzzles because some of them, once I figured them out, got to the end of the chain of interconnected events and tasks.
Okay, I'm going to try to get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that texture is crazy. It's almost better than pork in a way. A, because you don't feel as bad, but also because it's actually sensational. Texture.
It's really good.
It's really good.
It takes on sauce nicely.
Since they go first, they have probability P of winning on the first try. What's the probability that they win on the second try? That attempt only happens if both players miss. The probability of a miss is 1 minus the probability of a success. So the miss probabilities are...
Rather than try to reinvent the wheel to solve these problems, remember, there's a study for that. And by that, I mean a wealth of knowledge and years of research exists to help teachers diagnose and solve educational issues. In this class, we'll learn how to find and access educational research.
One reason is to try to protect or to prop up domestic industries that are losing out to imports from foreign competitors. Another is to retaliate against unfair trade practices by foreign governments. For most of the last century, tariffs fell out of favor. Much of the world came to see freer trade as a benefit. It boosted growth.
I did have the opportunity to try a case to a jury verdict in the Boston Municipal Court. I got to do the opening, the direct, the cross, the closing with an actual bar certified district attorney next to me, but I got to do it all by myself and just get.
The biggest thing I try to get my students to reflect on is as students and as human beings, how are they going to make a positive impact and a positive change with the information that they've received? When they learn about the Holocaust or they learn about contemporary genocide and they see.
Try to meditate at least like 2 minutes or 5 minutes a day, because meditation is that habit that will change your life. It's something so simple and yet has such a profound impact. I'll post some links down below on meditation and its many benefits, but if there's any one habit that I recommend everyone try.
And try and convince you in just 15 minutes that this isn't a flimsy idea or a short-term trend, but a powerful cultural and economic force reinventing not just what we consume, but how we consume. Now I'm going to start with a deceptively simple example. Hands up, how many of you have books
In particular, I decided I would try to address the thorny issue of work-life balance. So I stepped back from the workforce and I spent a year at home with my wife and 4 young children. But all I learned about work-life balance from that year.
And so when he later ran for president and said he was going to be the one who was going to try to heal that wound, he had credibility. And then Washington did to him what it does to everyone, and the wound only festered.
What was the promise?
You know, the whole "there is no red state."
Back to the beginning and start from the Philosopher's Stone and try and read the whole series, and then never get past the first few books because I'm awful at getting distracted, especially with reading long series. So yeah, the Philosopher's Stone, I don't even know if I need to say what it's about, do I? In case you're one of the people that doesn't know what Harry Potter is about.
To try and organise her mind when she felt like she was losing control, as well as just organising her life in general, but it was a coping mechanism for her. This book, I read it in about, I think it was just over a day. If I hadn't desperately needed to go to bed, I would have stayed up and finished it. I just couldn't help but read on.
Voices and funny faces to try to imbue, to read what one another is thinking and feeling. Imagine if with virtual reality we all become like octopi and wear our minds outside our skin. Imagine the intimacy that becomes possible. This is really what excites me about virtual.
And try to connect that to the economic conditions and to what people are eating, then we can have a better basis for projecting into the future.
You're going to try and discover what everyone else thinks by just asking a few people, making a few discreet inquiries to see if what you're thinking is also what everyone else is thinking. All right, so what on earth is a quandary? If you're in a quandary.
Try to just be Steve Jobs when they're not Steve Jobs. That's why I've created a test, an entrepreneur personality test that people can go take, because I feel like everyone doesn't model themselves after 1 or 2 entrepreneurs. They have to find what's my personality and then how do I build a team around me that complements it. So I get most disappointed by the people.
It's a no-go. Try and do your best to keep your pets away from other people. Number 4, say no to dog parks. I love watching Bear play with other pups, especially small ones like little French bulldogs. But during a time like this, the last thing you want is one of the dogs who potentially licked one of their owners who has COVID, then plays with your dog.
The first rule is a willingness to try something new. After all, as someone wise once said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Innovation and creativity are...
If you say stop doing something and try and stop, it won't happen. This is why dieting programs fail. Substitution is absolutely key. The behavioral psychologists have discovered that if you want to move somebody from here and stop them doing that thing, the best thing to do is to substitute what they do. So people that think...
I was, that I would try to overcompensate my time and energy to change their minds. And at the end of the day, it had everything to do with my insecurity about what I did. Speaking of insecurity, let's go to the second sign you almost definitely take things personally. Number 2.
Because that's something that we really try to address in each and every video. Don't forget, we also have a video with study strategies that you might want to check out. And we have helpful GIF animations and comics on our website that you might find useful. And if you are studying for something big, it is our sincere amoebic wish that you will feel confident about
our stores and try on an Avalanche pack for yourself. That's all we have for you today, and we'll see you next time.
that. So let's try to optimize how many cops we need. What's the minimum number of cops required to guarantee that the robber will be caught? The answer to this question is the cop number of a graph. We'll abbreviate the cop number of a graph G like this. What's the cop number of a cycle? Well, one cop isn't enough. It'll take two.
Like trying music here, just re-spotting it over and over again. So there was just, before like we honed in on the final score and before we were orchestrating, you know, the final score, we were just flying different little mock-ups around all over the place and just experimenting for a lot of months.
I think it was.
If you try to pull it off, which, to be clear, seems like a totally reasonable thing to do given how it looks, you will end up wrecking the hell out of this phone. All right, so Samsung doesn't want people to rip off the screen protector on the top, so what do? Well, they extended the screen protector up underneath the plastic bezels here, and they also added these funny little tabs on the top and the bottom so that you...
To try to impose its views on the people. Their choice, obey men. God, not so much. What do Christians do when faced with oppression from those whom Satan has wiled and enticed to plot and to plan to remove all?
Often these people don't even try the tasks at all. In UX research, an outlier is a participant whose behavior or performance is very different from the rest of your user population. But just because a participant is an outlier does not necessarily mean that they're also a cheater. They might just not really be representative of your...
In Northern Ireland began to try and reach out to an audience that was outside of Northern Ireland. They regarded the government inside of Northern Ireland as incorrigible, and they were trying to make a case to London, to the Parliament, that their civil rights were being denied. They were arguing that they didn't have universal suffrage. And so
but I'm kind of happy with this. Let's try it. Let's hit next. Okay, so this looks really familiar. This looks like I'm posting to Instagram. So, wow, and we have an option to add a Wikipedia link. Interesting. Let's leave the, okay, I'm gonna leave all the default
front of the camera and tri-channel as a result. And I love making tri-channel videos now. For any of you who follow the tri-channel, I'm over there in some of the videos. Have a look. Don't brain shame me. And not to mention the fact that I can now get apple drops whenever I want.
Occasionally the script writers try to put elements of darkness into the Doctor's character, but for the most part she of course, for the most part the character is a bit of a goody-goody. So what's interesting in this episode is he basically robs a bank without a second thought, doesn't care. I mean, he sees that he's taking the high ground, I guess. He sees that he's
world's most beautiful cities, and you should all go there to try out their cheese, wine, and see how much baguette you can fit up your ass. Hey guys, like our stuff, subscribe, like, share,
and ask us what else you want to watch, and so we'll tell you we're gonna make it, but we're not.
Because we...
Can you cut it?
Back up to 185, kill the heat, and try to put the lid on, realize that you put a little bit too much water in there, wonder why you included that in the edit, cover it up, and after about 15 minutes your chicken should have reached 165 degrees Fahrenheit internally. This method of poaching chicken poaches it very gently and slowly, which prevents it from getting all dry and stringy like chicken breast.
Come back into the room and let them try and complete the task, but don't give any instructions. Every time they are on the right track in regards to completing the task, clap your hands louder. If they move away from performing the task, reduce your applause or stop it entirely. Once the person understands what they are supposed to do, let them explain the task.
Doing commissions, and then use time and capital that I would try and amass to do my more, in some ways, personal artwork that involved a lot of collaborative activity with choreographers, dancers, people in theater. And for example, the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, I co-produced a big
college, there are a couple years when you try to keep in touch with the people that were your friends, and then you might meet new friends through work or through mutual friends. But I just noticed that year after year, as you get older, if you don't make a constant effort, your friend group really dwindles down. Your social life becomes like quieter and quieter and quieter.
And to try to get abortion statutes that they couldn't get repealed invalidated by the action of judges.
So a group of lawyers in New York, Roy Lucas was one of them, got together and decided we need to go to court. It's interesting that going to court wasn't.
What I'm saying here is I would try to move on from her and say, hey, okay, again, try. I urge you, try. Meaning set up a date, move the interaction forward, ask her out, do that. But then, as second it doesn't work out, if it doesn't, then you just move on and move on as fast as you can.
If you try and address the unstable view of self and the relationship instability with medication, you're not going to get far. Then the instability leads to more depressed or angry emotions, emptiness, hopelessness, suicidal thoughts, and then really poor coping mechanisms like self-harm.
Deeply and empathetically, if I try to understand why the artist did what they do, I become a better artist. And in doing that, I actually give them agency, because this artist who lived in 1450 suddenly is doing something in the world, right? Fourthly, the audience.
Online, the more seriously you're taken. So try and join in with discussions and trending debates as much as you can. Remember to consider your audience when writing content. So build a list of 10 to 20 brands and people who work in your field, and build content around the topics they write about or engage with most.
People try to fit the guys that you're meeting into these various categories as best as possible. It's not going to be easy to do in the first 2 to 3 months. It's really as you get to know someone. Once you get to that 6-month, 9-month, year-long relationship, you're going to get a feel. Are they too dramatic? Are they conflict-ridden? Are they social? Or are they...
History.